right, welcome to the show. Today we're going to talk about something we haven't mentioned. I'm surprised we've done this many episodes. We're going to talk about how to work with contractors. If you're in New York State, honestly, if you're anywhere in the country, this will be applicable. But Michael and I do the most of our renovations in New York. And before we get into that, I actually just completed a smaller renovation in California, and I got lucky as hell. I found two contractors, both were referrals, and one was a little expensive, but that was okay. They were the most reliable contractors I've ever worked with, honestly. Actually, second most reliable contractors. And I barely knew these guys from a hole in the wall. I showed face there like 2 or 3 times just because it was 20 minutes from my house. So the point of that is that sometimes you're going to find some gems. And once you start doing volume, you'll find out if they're really gems. And then we're just going to cover everything you need to know about contractors today in the next 30 minutes. So we're going to cover how they work, what to look out for, what to say to contractors, what not to say to contractors. That's the key there. So Michael, what is your experience been? You've renovated a lot more houses than me with contractors. And we're also going to talk about the difference between hiring a GC versus subbing out the job, because that's a whole other, can of worms.
So I get asked a lot about contractors, right? One of the main fears that I find that people who haven't done this business have are, how am I going to find a contractor? And I don't have a great answer to it, right? It's something that I honestly say I can't really give. There's no magic. Everybody wants this magic thing, like dial this number and some guy will refer you a contractor who's going to be quick, cheap, and good. But the truth is, those are the 3 things, right? Speed, quality, and price. And someone once told me that you hope to get 2. Right, you almost never find 3, so you have to sort of decide which one you're gonna be easy on. Right, are you gonna pay a little more? Are you going to have somebody that's not as quick, or you have somebody that's not as good? And I think you really should think about it that way. But there is no easy answer, right? I remember I saw like a video 10 years ago where the guy said, go to Home Depot at like 6 a.m. when they open, and you'll find the best contractors, because those are the guys who are there early. And I bought like a sign. It was like one of these things I picked up, and it was like, we're looking to hire, and it didn't really result in much. So I don't think there is. Maybe if I did that every day for a year, I could find people. But you don't really know if somebody's good just because they come over to you at Home Depot. There is no quick and easy answer to how to find good contractors. I think everybody wants that, but we'll talk about finding contractors, and we'll talk about how you sort of protect yourself against contractors who may try to screw you. And I think it's the most important thing to understand is that there is no easy answer. The reason why scaling a flipping business where you're actually doing work, major work on a property, is so hard to scale, one of the main reasons is because hiring contractors is not easy. There is no
I 100% agree with you. I think the only way to scale the flipping business, if you want to do that, if you have the craziness, if you really want to get into that brain damage, is you got to have your own construction company or something where you're controlling it, but you're still like,
even then, like I know guys who really do a lot of flips, and they have a whole project management team, but even then it's hard. It's still hard, right? And in New York, it's harder than a lot of other places because dealing with the local municipalities is very difficult, and licensing for these guys is not so easy. So, for instance, I'm in Nassau County, so you might have a Nassau County home improvement license, but if a guy's doing work in a village of Malvern, he needs to be approved with the village of Malvern. So when you're doing work in certain areas, you need to go and ask them for an approved contractor list, and then go through that. And they may not be the contractor that you use; that may have different guys. So
yeah, that's all up in the Valley. That's everywhere.
Hard in New York, and costs here are higher, right? People pay their subcontractors and their laborers more here than a lot of parts of the country. So in general, costs are higher, and it's hard. It's a hard thing in New York. There's no easy way, but we're going to give as many tips as we can to make it.
So I'll kind of get into like how to find contractors, or at least how I found contractors. And this is not rocket science here, but it's referrals, right? And that's the number one way that I've found contractors. Funny, one of my best guys, actually, the way I found him was actually from a PPC ad. My mom was like, back like 5 years ago, she's like, hey, can you help me find someone to like do the bathroom? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So I Googled like contractors near me, and I found this guy in Javier, and he just showed up, and I was like, at arm's length, and I was like, all right, like just do the work. And He did everything he said he was going to do. And then this was a small job. Well, a small job relative to, just doing a bathroom. So then I called him for another job and did everything he said he was going to do. And I kind of got lucky. I don't think he does volume really, but at the end of the day, referrals I found have been the best source to get contractors. Other people, doesn't have to be investors. It could be homeowner. Well, homeowners is a little tricky because then you're going to deal with consumers, but word of mouth for the most part is the way to go. And then the biggest thing I would say, if you're not doing high volume, is you want to find contractors who don't have huge contracting businesses. If you find that, you're going to get reamed at the what, because it's like a wholesaler selling for top dollar versus the new wholesaler who's going to exclusively sell you properties.
Right. So it's a big deal is when you, wherever you're finding a contractor, and I agree with you that referrals is the number one way to find them.
Yeah.
You can't be using like a standard home remodeler because those guys are charging a lot of money and you are an investor and you can't pay top dollar for the work. Right. So you want to find referrals from other people who have done work for investors or other investors who have hired people. And you need to be getting the work at a discount, just like you're getting the property at a discount.
100%. The only thing I will do where I'll pay a little bit of a premium is if it's not a premium, but sort of, is if I'm doing like major things in the house, plumbing, electric, pretty much plumbing and electric. That I won't skimp out on. I'll hire a plumber. Well, I've done this the wrong way too, and it's bit me in the ass, but hiring someone who might be a little bit more for something that could really impact the safety of the house. Like for example, electricity, that's like, I don't negotiate. Like that's like usually in the areas I operate in, you have to have a certified electrician to do that, which is, well, I understand that. So plumbing and electric, let's put that to the side. I'm talking about wholetailing a house, doing a rehab that's less than 30 grand. I try to find one sub who has usually a small crew and things that aren't that dangerous, kitchens, bathrooms, painting floors. Generally, that contractor can do everything, right? I don't want him touching the plumbing. I don't want him touching any electrical work, maybe GFI stuff, but like that you can save a lot on because that stuff isn't complicated. It's very simple. You can have day laborers do that. It's not fabricating is the same, that's not that complicated.
Right. So but as you mentioned plumbers and electricians, let's talk about what a general contractor is and what the choices are. So most people are going to hire a GC, a general contractor, who's going to then hire out the subs we just discussed. So plumber, electrician, and other people, maybe a painter, a sheetrock guy, a flooring guy. The choice when you're doing work is whether you want to GC the job yourself, which means you are going to hire those subs, multiple subcontractors, and you are going to manage the job yourself. The advantage, disadvantage is it's going to be cheaper because a GC is going to take between 10 and 20% over and above for his own profit, typically. Yeah. But he's going to be responsible for making sure the job goes well. He's technically your project manager. But everybody is different, right? There are GCs who will take the job and then just drop the ball also. So in general, I usually don't hire a GC, but if you're doing a major job, you may want to hire a GC because it's less headache for you, even though it costs a little bit more. But in general, if you're doing significant plumbing or electrical work, you want to hire somebody who's licensed because a lot of the municipalities are going to ask a licensed plumber or a licensed electrician to sign off on it. So people say, well, I'm going to use my friend who was an electrician or used to be, and then I'm going to have a different electrical company sign off for it or a plumbing thing. You could do that, but usually that's going to cost you money too, right? You have to pay that extra plumber to sign. I have plumbers who sign off on other people's work, but they're not cheap. They're going to look and they're going to make sure, and they're going to say, this wasn't done the code, and I have to fix this, and I have to fix that, and then you got to pay them a couple $1,000s to sign off on a job. So what they're basically saying, and what's probably true, is you use me in the first place. And I found that that's usually the case. If you're filing permits and you need a plumbing permit, what we need here is very often a electrical underwriter's inspection. And if you don't use somebody who's licensed, they probably don't know what exactly is going to pass that inspection. Or if you use a plumber who's not licensed, he probably doesn't know what the plumbing code is. So using licensed people for those trades is usually a good idea, even if it costs a little.
100%. So let's get into how to pay contractors, because that's where a lot of people just get blown out of the water. So I'll tell you what I do, and I'm sure you do something similar. So I will get it in writing, whatever the job is, scope of work. Like I'm not a brains. I don't have software that does this. I just write this out on a Word document. And I'll say, okay, so Mr. Contractor, we're going to go do this, line items. This is exactly what we agreed on price wise. I get it in writing, usually via email or text, somewhere where it's a proven document. And I say, I'm going to pay you a certain amount upfront for the materials. And another thing, I don't buy the materials. I haven't been to Home Depot to get supplies for a house, and I don't think I've ever done it, honestly, except for a lockbox. Just because at the end of the day, especially if I don't live there, I'm going to have him give me his quote with all the materials, and then I'm going to verify and make sure he's not ripping me off. Once again, I will pay a little bit more because I'm not there, where it's like whatever. But the jobs that I get quoted are materials and labor, right? I don't get the material. I know people who do get their materials, and that's fine. But for me, it's just not really efficient. And at the end of the day, I know what stuff costs for the most part. So like if they're giving me some bullshit price, I can call them out on it and be like, that's not true. So with that being said, what I'll do is I'll pay them a deposit up front for the materials. They will start the work. Someone will show up at the property, verify that they're not drunk they're probably drunk, but as long as they're doing the job. I had one guy, they were drunk at the house. This property went to hell in a handbasket, but they put the floors in backwards, and I made an appearance there, and I looked at him and I said,
"What do you mean the floor is backwards? How was that? What kind of floor?"
There was two types of floors that were going in the property, and he was supposed to put one set of floors in one way and then the other set of, and it was all ass backwards. And I looked at him and I said, "Can you see the problem here?" And he was like, he looked at me like I was from outer space, as he would say. And I said, this doesn't look right. You already put the floors in and they're backwards. I said, you got to fix that. And he's like, oh, I'm sorry. I'm like, well, you can be sorry all you want. Fix the fucking job, So you got to have, the point of that is you got to have someone, doesn't have to be you, go there and make sure they're doing what they say they're going to do. Because the last thing you want is to pay a contractor before you verify. Because once they have all the money, listen, a lot of contractors are not going to fuck you over. Some of them will, but well, yeah, I guess, knock on wood, but they're in set. You want to almost dangle a carrot in front of them, because if you haven't paid them yet and they did some shitty work, you have leverage against them. But if you pay them up front and then all of a sudden they finish the job and they have another job they're going to go to, they'll probably fix it if they're decent humans, but they're going to drag their feet. They're going to go over, like, they're not
ask for more money.
Yeah,
for sure. So two things you mentioned I want to talk about. First is material. So what I do is I have a Home Depot account with text to confirm. So I'll usually get a quote just for labor, and then it's like go to Home Depot and buy all the stuff, and then I just text it so he doesn't have to wait there. I certainly don't have to go, but I can see every single invoice. I know what he bought, and I know sometimes he'll buy other stuff. He'll buy whatever. Like if he buys himself water, a case of water, I don't care. He might buy a ladder, but if he's buying a ladder every time on my jobs, I'm like, why do you need so many freaking ladders? So I check it. But what's important also is if you're getting hard money, there's going to be a draw schedule from the hard money lender, because hard money lenders usually pay for the construction. So it's very important that you match your draw schedule that you gave the hard money lender with what you're giving to the contractor. So I've had situations where some hard money lenders are pretty loose with that. Like if you told them you're going to do the interior first and the exterior last, they're going to be like, okay, we'll still pay you. Some hard money lenders are very strict about it. So I had a contractor once who just went off the reservation. He just was doing his own thing. It's very important to do things in a certain order, right? For example, you want to do floors and then paint, right? You want to do floors last, right? Because if you do floors first and then you paint, your new floors are going to look like shit when spackle and paint goes down on it, right? You need to do certain things, right? You need to do plumbing and electrical before you close the walls up, right? There are guys who don't know that. They're just too stupid, and they'll close the walls up and they'll go, oh shit, I forgot to run that water line. That happens all the time. So I'm very specific with them. You have to. So most contractors are not good businessmen, right? I'm not going to say they're not smart. Some are smart, some are not, but they're not good businessmen. They are people who usually were a subcontractor or a tradesman, and they decided, I don't want to give up a big chunk of the thing, and I'm going to become a general contractor. I'm going to do this myself. Most of them are not. They can't think well. This and another thing we'll talk about is multiple jobs and what happens with them. But I tell them the exact order it has to be done, and I say to them, I am paying you. And I also give them some money up front if they need, or I'll have them go buy the materials if they don't. And then I'll say, this has to get done first, right? You must do all the demo first. You must then do all the plumbing, electrical, second, third, and then it goes up. I go, if you don't adhere to this order, I'm not going to pay you because I'm paying you $10,000 when you do this, $20,000 when you do this, 20,000, and that's how it works. So it's very important that you match the draw schedule with the contractor if you have a draw schedule from a hard money lender, and that you stay on top of them staying in order. Very often they will go out of order. They'll be like, oh, it's a sunny day, I'm going to do the siding now. I'm like, the lender is not going to pay me for the siding until the bathrooms are done. Don't do the siding now. So these are the kinds of things where, and I still believe, I am a firm believer that you could create an incredibly lucrative contracting business with simply the promise that you're going to speak to the clients every single day. That's all, just every single day. Well, I'm going to call you every single day. Even if nothing's going on, I'm going to call you and tell you why nothing's going on, right? And I've done major renovations in my house several times. And when the contractor starts, you're like, this is great. The framing goes up so fast. This is great. You love the guy. He's amazing. And then as things progress, you want to kill him. In general, most people want to kill their contractor. Once in a while, you have a good experience, and it's just because of lack of communication. These guys don't communicate, right? Where the hell is he? He hasn't been here in 3 days. If you're not coming for 3 days, it's fine. Tell me that you're not coming because the guy who does the taping and spackling is sick. Whatever it is. It's all it takes. Just have communication every day. I think you could create a $20 million contracting business anywhere. Just saying, I am going to be in touch with you every day. Do you prefer phone calls, texting, email, whatever you prefer? I'm going to contact you. And even after we're done, I'm going to talk to you if there's a problem later. And most guys are not going to communicate with you, and they're going to disappear, and they're not going to be honest with you. I'm on my way there when the guy's like in Virginia.
Oh, I've heard that story too many times.
Oh, I'm on my way.
I'm in traffic.
Stuck in traffic and doesn't show up for 4 days. That's some bad traffic, right? So it's very important that you give contractors an order. There is an order to do work that makes sense. There are orders that don't make sense. You need to communicate with them. If you don't adhere to my order, you're not getting paid on work that you do because you didn't do it in the right order. So I think that's important. Now let's talk about multiple jobs and contractors.
Oh, this is where it goes off.
As I said, most contractors are not good business people. They don't manage resources well, right? They have most of the resources are labor, right? They're getting a job from you and they need 4 guys to do the job. They don't manage their labor well. So I've had a lot of experiences where a contractor was really good on the first job. Great. Excellent. Priced well, did everything great. And he said, I want more jobs. I give him a second job, and he's okay. And then he goes, I want more jobs. Give me a second. And I gave him 2 jobs at one time. So you think, how much more complicated can 2 jobs be? He did 2 jobs for me, and both jobs went to hell, like terrible. Material in the wrong place. Guys are not there. It almost took much more than twice as long to do 2 jobs as it would have been if I just gave him 1 job and the next job, because he wasn't able to manage his resources well. So it's hard, right? If you use a contractor and he's good, and he's quick, and he's good, he's quick, he's cheap, all the things you want, and the guy says, please give me more business, it's hard to say no, but you have to be very, very careful, because and some guy could manage 2 jobs, and when you give him 3 jobs, they all turn to hell. So you have to be on top of them, as you said, whether you're going there to see it, I don't know about every day, but almost every day, or you're sending someone to see it pretty much every day. You need to be on top of them, and then and recognize where things start veering, right? Once the guy starts telling you, yeah, I'm going to be there this afternoon, and then you send somebody there at 9 p.m. and no one was there, and then you go, what happened? And he goes, the guy wasn't there? What do you mean?
Oh, that's
they told me he was going there. He'll get it done this weekend. And that's the kind of thing that just gets dragged on a lot. And what's really happening, so let me tell you what really happens most of the time. Because these guys don't know how to manage their resources, they keep taking on new jobs, right? Because for a lot of people, especially if it's a regular retail home remodel, they get a huge deposit up front, and they need that cash because they don't know how to manage the cash. They don't know how to manage the payroll. They don't know how to manage all their resources. So you have 2 jobs coming in, and then they go and they take a job, they take a big deposit, and they need to show that guy some work right away. And if that means taking all their resources away from your 2 jobs to make that new homeowner happy, where he's probably going to make more money than you're paying him, he's going to do that, and that's just what happens. Or people leave, and the guy didn't, the guy pissed. The guy didn't buy them lunch, and they all got pissed and walked out. Things like that happen all the time. And they're not going to be honest with you. Like, no guy's going to tell you, hey, all my workers left me. They all left. No one's going to say that. He's going to say, oh, I had a problem. I'm getting them tomorrow. Yeah, they just don't. A lot of them are insecure and unable to be honest with you about what's really going on, and that is very, very common with contractors. So you have to be on top of them and make sure that, as you said, that you owe them money, so that enough money that it incentivizes them to finish your job.
Yeah, that's that is the nugget of the show, honestly, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you're doing this. I mean, in our area, it is a little more expensive just because of the costs and stuff, but especially with the hard money, when you have a draw, I don't personally, I hate doing that because at the end of the day, I end up fronting the money anyway. And then it's like kind of like this limbo period, but the contractors mostly cannot manage. Like I had one time, I remember this, it was the same job. I would show up there and all of a sudden, like, there was like the house looks like a tornado went through it. And I make a phone call and I'm like, hey, like you said this job was going to be done. And like, we still owe you money. And like, there's shit everywhere. And like the house is like, looks like it's falling over. Like, and then, it's the same. Oh, I'm sorry. And they just don't get it. Like, and it's okay. Like, that's part of their thing. That's kind of that their problem becomes your problem. But
right. So I've had a conversation with contractors where I go, listen to me. If it's 98% done, it's like it's 0% done. I need to show this property to retail buyers. If there's 2% not done, it's not good. Now, I've also had the conversation with people who after a while, I realized they're never going to finish 2%. It's worth it for me to hire another guy, a handyman, to come in and just do the punch list. Like if the guy is cheap and if he's priced well and he does pretty good work and he's relatively quick, if he can't, there are guys who just can't finish, right? They just can't finish. So it almost pays to bring in another guy to finish the job. This is everything you need to do, even if it's more, right? If you saved enough from the beginning. So, but you should have that conversation with the contractor first, right? So you understand, I'm leaving $15,000 for the end because I need everything on the punch list done, right? And some guys will say yeah and not do it, and some guys will say yes and then do it. But it's got to be clear. If you're selling a house retail, you can't have a window that's broken. You can't have him leaving all this stuff. Like I very often hire cleaning crews to come in after the contractor's done. It's worth it, even though the contractor says I'm going to clean it, because they don't clean it.
They never clean it.
Right. So
that happens to me a lot. That's funny you say that, because that always happens at the end of the job. It's like looks like the Dust Bowl went on in the property, and I'm like, I actually had this happen on a house recently. The job got finished. And I called the contractor, and obviously wasn't there. Actually, no, I went there. This one I showed up, and then after it was done, because I was in New York, and I said, you got to go back there and you got to clean all the cockroaches out of the property. And he's like, oh, I clean them out. And I'm like, all right, well, you clean them out. So he sends me this video, and now I'm in California, so there's really nothing I can do. I sent someone over there to verify, and they said, Greg, it looks like the roaches have eyes have entered the property. And I'm like, all right. So I called the contractor back. I said, listen, you said you cleaned all the fucking cockroaches out. They're still there. So go over there and clean them. And I was pissed because I paid him. He goes over, cleans the fucking property. 2 days later, same thing. They're back, or he didn't do anything. So then, you know what I did? I called the cleaning company.
You can't blame the guy for cockroaches. They come from other places.
But he didn't clean them. He lied to me. I said, dude, just, if you can't do the job, just tell me. So then, you know what I did? I hired a cleaning company, I hired the heart surgeon to do heart surgery, and magically they never came back. So isn't that crazy?
It's hard with cleaning also, because I've seen jobs where they were a disaster and the guy cleaned it like 90% and he did a huge amount of work. He spent hours doing it, but it's still not where you want to show it.
Yes.
Right? So
yes.
This guy is not going to, pull out his toothbrush and clean out the grout in the floor tiles, right? You need to get a real cleaning company to do that sometimes. So most contractors are not great at cleaning. There are guys who are spick and span clean, but you got to take the good with the bad, right? And it's like, I usually figure it's going to be a couple $100 for a cleaning service come in when they're done. And it's easier not to fight with the guy about how dirty he left the place and just have the cleaning crew come and just clean it all.
As long as all the major stuff is done. Just in summary with everything. So this is like at the end of the day, when let's just walk through a cosmetic. I'll walk through a real property. So this was actually a big rehab. So this one was almost $100,000. So this property we blew the back of the house off, which, like I said, I normally don't do this stuff, but this long story short on this one, the property had an illegal porch on the back. It was totally illegal, bunk porch, and it looked like a tree house.
It was only a little illegal, right? It was only a foot illegal, right?
Yeah, maybe. It looked like it was like a hazard. Like if you walked on this porch, you might be, deceased. It was like the thing would fall over. So we got a permit, which I don't like doing, and we ended up knocking the whole back of the property off and built a deck. And But what ended up happening was this contractor, and this is where like, this is a whole nother, I guess, show, but we did a good job. Like he did a good job. He did everything he said he was going to do. The house looked really good. But I realized that there were some things in the property after this renovation occurred that didn't really make a lot of sense. Like, for example, we did the whole entire house. It was a gut job for the most part, at least downstairs. We blew and took the wall out upstairs, like did a lot of shit. But I realized that we didn't put the right count, like the countertops kind of looked like shit. And then the cabinets, we didn't paint the cabinets, which is a small thing to do. Like it doesn't cost a lot of money.
You didn't do the kitchen?
We did the kitchen, but we didn't paint the cabinets. So after the whole thing was done, it just didn't look that good. And the cabinets just looked shitty. And I'm like, oh, we should have painted these. We didn't end up doing it. We still sold the house. But then even in the bathroom, like the whole house is renovated. And then the bathroom wasn't up there. It's just the bathroom, when I walked the property, everything looked like shit except for the bathroom. So I'm like, you know what? Forget about the bathroom. Forget it. So then like it just didn't look right. Right. And like, so the point of that is like, if you're not really there, like I wasn't really running that job, you can do a lot of the work. And then if you're not clear, like I should have added the bathroom there, it would have cost me maybe another, I don't know, $3,000. So like there's a lot of little nuances, and a lot of these contractors aren't really going to pick up on that. Like sometimes the good ones will say, hey, you know what? I know we're doing this, but I really think it would make more sense if we did that.
No, most won't.
Yeah, most won't. So then like all of a sudden they're going to complete their scope of work. And then, you know, you're stuck with this property that it'll probably sell, but then it's not. Is a lot of the stuff I realized when you're doing a house flip, it's like these small things that don't really seem that important really sell the house. Like having a good bathroom.
That's a whole, we can do a whole other show.
Where that's what we'll do
next. When I was gut renovating everything, the hardest thing I had to do was decide what to do and what not to do.
Oh man.
We should do a show on that. It's not a simple thing, but I came up with a pretty good system for it. But when you're talking to contractors, you know, most of the time they want to do everything, right? They want
everything.
It's possible. But when something is not right, they're very rarely going to say, hey, you should do this. I think it's important. They just don't come up with it. But the first time they're not even there. They send people they don't even know. So
yeah, they send their crews there. So last thing I want to cover on the contractor topic is you mentioned something in the beginning: good, cheap, fast. Pick 2 out of 3. So I'll tell you what I pick, and I want to hear what you. So what I normally will do is the fast. The fast is usually, because at the end of the day, if you're flipping a house, fast is really going to be correlated with price, because the longer you have the house, you know, the longer it's going to, the more money you're going to pay. Like every day you own a house with hard money, it's like a couple $100 a day minimum, if not more, depending on where it is. So I look for fast. And at the end of the day, I personally will usually pay a little bit more if the work is decent, right? So
you're looking for fast and good and paying a little more.
Fast and good, paying a little bit more. What about you? And that's just my preference, because if they can get it done, they can get it done. You know, I found that cheap contractors ultimately will cost you more money, because when you get the home inspection on the flip, there's all this work that was done shitty, and all of a sudden you got to bring someone else in, or you got to give them a credit, and so it just turns into.
It's a question of how much, right? So most of my experiences have been with cheap and good, and not so fast. Now the question is, did their lack of speed end up making them not cheap? Probably on a couple of occasions it screwed me over. I had a deal that took over a year. Should have taken 4 months.
Wow.
But you know, I wish I had a list of contractors where I can see good, fast, cheap. You know, you could check them off and say, oh, this one I need a fast and good guy, and I'll pay more. I wish I had that kind of lineup of guys ready to go. You know, sometimes it comes down to who's ready to do the job, right? You close.
Oh, absolutely.
You look for a guy, and the guy goes, I just started a job, I'm going to be here for 4 months. And you're like, I'm not waiting for you. I got to find somebody else. So in general, my experience most of the time has been I'm getting cheap and good, and not so fast. But obviously, as we discussed, at some point, not so fast ends up being not being cheap. So that's what I found. But there's no right answer, because cheap is all relative, right? You know, some guy could be, if a guy's 4 times as much money, you're not going to use him, even if he's fast and good. And if a guy is 4 times as slow, you're not going to use him, even if he's cheap and good. So, and good is all relative, right? Sometimes you say the guy did a great job on this house, and then he sends 3 guys who don't know how to put tile in on this house, and I go, this bathroom's fucking disaster. That's happened. I'm like, well, who did this? And he's like, oh yeah, it doesn't look so good. I'm like, no shit, it doesn't look good. You got to break these tiles off and do them again. So it happens. There's no right answer, because they're all different functions of how much they are, right? How much is not fast going to cost you, and how much is not good going to end up making you do it again.
Yeah.
So there's no answer, but I would say overall, I've probably gotten cheap and good over fast,
Yeah.
and then I just sort of keep it in my mind. So the only way, one nugget is, and this is hard to enforce, but I've told people you need to finish this job by X date. If you finish by X date, I'll give you an extra $5,000. If you don't finish by that date, not only am I not giving you $5,000, but I'm taking $200 off of our contract price every day. The problem is if some guy really jerks you around at some point, he's not going to come and finish a job. So ideally, you want to put incentives in to finish quickly, and you want to put penalties in if they finish slowly. But understand, there's only so far you can go with enforcing that, because a lot of these guys, if they have a license, can put a mechanics lien on your property because you didn't pay them, even if you have a contract that says you're not going to finish by a certain date. They can always come up with the excuse why. And it's easy to file a mechanics lien, which sucks. You can't sell the house, and you can get a mechanics lien even when you paid the GC and he didn't pay a subcontractor.
Oh, you can get screwed doing that.
So I would say that you want to incentivize speed with money, and you want to penalize lack of speed, but it only goes so far.
Yeah. So you want to know the cure for this, for all the listeners? The cure, well, one of the cures, if you want to get involved in this crazy world of rehabbing, is the best way to prevent most of the jobs from going south, at least having a buffer, is buying the property at the right number. The number one thing I see with people is if you overpay for a property and you're operating on a slim margin as a flipper, if you have one contractor do the wrong thing, your whole profit could get sunk, right? So if you can get into the habit, and we've covered many episodes on this, on spending time doing the right things by finding deals at the right number. And this is something that a lot of big flippers will say this: you get it at the right number, you can have a lot of these other things, these ancillary issues, solve themselves over time. But if you overpay for a property and your budget is 30 and you can't go a penny over, that's when you start getting desperate as a flipper. And then all of a sudden your $25,000 profit turns into $5,000 and you basically did a house for free. So you gotta buy the deal at the right number.
I've had 3 properties where I screwed up. I didn't over improve them, but I asked too much for them, and it took a long time to sell, and I lost money on each of them. So that's another discussion. But it's very easy to over improve a property. It's very easy to get into the habit of might as well, right? Might as well, right?
Might as well. Yeah, I just did that.
You do these kitchen cabinets, and then the contractor goes, "Well, these floors aren't so great. You might as well do them too." And you go, "All right, how much is that going to cost? A couple $1,000s, okay?" And that thing happens for everything in the house. It never ends, right? The closet on the 3rd bedroom upstairs is a little small. You want me to expand it? And you're like, how much is that going to cost? It's like $800. But all these things keep adding and adding and adding, which is why I hate doing construction, right? My goal really is to get to zero construction. I'll never get there, but these are the parts of the business that I abhor, because it's just so easy to get into more and more. So I like doing as little work as possible. And then if I need to do more, I'll do more after, even if that costs me more when I do it. But that's off topic.
I just did that in California. That ended up hopefully working out. We went into escrow like 32.5 over ask, but it's got to close. It's got to be an appraisal. So I'll always get happy when the money's in my account. But
we could do another show on that, about how much. Well, that's that. I think we should do the next show. Like how do you decide what to do, what not to do? And we can talk about.
Oh, that's a good show. Yeah, that's. Look at that. I already got the idea for the next show. Good. Well, I hope the listeners got value. I'm sure they did. If they want to, get into the crazy world of hiring contractors, God bless your soul if you plan to do that. Definitely, you got to watch this episode again, share it with a couple friends, family members, whoever thinks this could be valuable. So Mike, this was a good one. We will cover the next one with how to renovate a house the right way, what to do, what not to do. And to all the listeners, we will catch everyone in the next episode.